Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The wreckage drifted in slow pirouettes, a shattered ballet of twisted alloy and scorched composite plating. Through the Kestrel's viewport, it looked like an exploded insect hive, humming silently in the dead dark of Venshara 9's orbital graveyard. Captain Reese Calder scratched the corner of his jaw, where the stubble always outpaced his shaving tech by half a day. "I thought you said this place was going to be empty," he muttered. "Correction," replied Bob from the nav console, his voice unnervingly chipper. "I said probably empty. Probability is a fluid mistress." "Yeah? Well, remind me not to swipe right on her again." The distress beacon was weak, hiccuping across frequencies like a drunken signal ghost. Most captains wouldn't have bothered, but Reese had that self-destructive curiosity particular to ex-freighter pilots with nothing left to lose and just enough empathy to cause problems. He guided the Kestrel in with a slow burn, retro thrusters flaring orange. Among the wreckage, something moved. At first, he thought it was just a power conduit twitching its last voltage. Then the shape shifted. Humanoid, maybe 5.5 feet, skin gleaming faintly under the ship's searchlights. She stood in the middle of the debris field, barefoot on a cracked bulkhead, hair streaming in zero gravity, and eyes glowing like two pieces of twin-star crystal, and ears, long, curved like blades. Elegant, if you like the lethal fairy look. When the docking bay opened, she didn't run. She stalked in, hips squared, chin lifted, a wild animal in a borrowed shape. Reese raised both hands slowly. "Hi, I'm Captain Reese. Don't touch me. And I'm definitely not going to do that. I'm not your pet." He blinked. "Well, I wasn't going to say that, but now I'm wondering if that's come up before." She sniffed, folding her arms, which revealed faint bioluminescent lines tracing under her skin like a map of distant galaxies. "Humans always assume you see long ears and suddenly it's, 'Who's a good girl? And do you do tricks?'" Reese opened his mouth, closed it, then glanced sideways at Bob, who had just rolled up on his treads with a medical scanner and a spare jumpsuit. "Should I offer her a treat?" Bob whispered. "She'll kill you." "I welcome the release from this job." She stepped further into the ship, casting a sharp gaze around like she owned the place. "Where am I?" "The Kestrel. Salvage class, patched with chewing gum and optimism. You're safe for now." "I don't do safe," she replied, then promptly collapsed face first into the floor. 2 hours later, she woke in the infirmary, furious and swearing in a language the translator hesitated to process. Reese leaned in, coffee in hand. "You passed out, probably from the vacuum exposure. No offense, but you're not exactly low maintenance." "I didn't ask for maintenance," she snapped, trying to sit up and failing spectacularly. "And I swear if you strapped a collar on me while I was out—" Reese raised both palms. "I didn't, but Bob made one, for laughs." "I embroidered it," Bob said proudly. "It says, Princess Murderface." Her lip twitched, just a little. "Maybe." She looked away. "My name is Elira. I'm Syntheri." Reese raised a brow. "Thought your kind were extinct. We prefer selectively distributed." He smiled faintly. "Welcome aboard, Elira. Don't worry. We don't do cages here." She glared, then slowly pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders. "I'll kill you if you try." "Noted." Outside, the debris field floated on, cold and indifferent. Inside, something dangerous, and maybe just a little lost, had curled up in the corner of his ship. The Kestrel wasn't exactly designed for guests, especially not bioluminescent alien fugitives with trauma issues and a habit of baring their teeth when spoken to before caffeine. Still, Elira had made herself a presence. Not a presence like a crew member or a passenger, more like a mildly radioactive statue that sometimes moved and threatened people in 4 languages. Reese watched her through the open mess hall door as she perched on top of the galley counter, like a particularly vengeful gargoyle, silently eating a ration bar with all the suspicion of someone who believed chocolate might be a weaponized lie. "You know," he said casually, "we have chairs." She didn't look up. "You think chairs are safe? They're designed for your bone structure. I've dislocated my tailbone twice on your desk stools." "You don't have a tailbone." She tore off a piece of the bar with her teeth, chewed deliberately, then said, "Not anymore." Bob rolled into the doorway behind Reese, holding a datapad and humming a tune from a 22nd century musical adaptation of Alien vs. Congress Star. "Captain," Bob said brightly, "someone posted a bounty alert on the netstream. Class 5 biological asset. Top-tier payout." Reese sighed. "And let me guess, the picture looks suspiciously like our long-eared snack gremlin?" Elira slowly turned her head. "Snack? What?" "Term of endearment," Reese said. "On Earth, it's affectionate. I hate Earth. Most people do." He took the pad from Bob, scrolling through the listing. The bounty image was grainy, but unmistakable. The ears alone could have earned her a sitcom. The listing was vague on details, but highlighted dangerous genetic anomalies, lethal design, and may emit energy fields hazardous to electronics and small pets. "Small pets?" Elira asked flatly. "You did short out the coffee maker by staring at it too hard," Bob offered. "It offended me." Reese pinched the bridge of his nose. "Okay. South. The good news is, we know who's after you. And the bad news? We don't know how many ships they have, what weapons they're packing, or how much they like hunting people for sport." She jumped down from the counter, landing with feline grace. "I'm not afraid." "Of course not. But you should be slightly afraid of Bob's cooking." "I made stew last week," Bob said. "Everyone lived." "Barely," Reese muttered. Later in the ship's lower deck, Elira paced the length of the old cargo bay, now repurposed into a kind of personal lair. She hadn't asked for it, but Reese had ordered the crew to clear out the spare crates and let her have the space. She hadn't said thank you. She did, however, bite one fewer person that week. Reese leaned against the frame of the open door. "You were built, weren't you?" he asked quietly. "Not born." Her pacing stopped. She didn't turn around. "The syntheri were made during the Obsidian Wars. Bioweapons. Meant to be fast, smart, loyal. They got 2 out of 3. You weren't loyal. Not to them." A long silence followed. She touched one of the walls lightly, fingers tracing a long scratch in the hull. "I ran. They tried to wipe us all out once the war ended. Called us unstable." Reese nodded slowly. "And now they want to recapture what's left." She turned then, face unreadable. "You think I'm dangerous?" He gave her a slow grin. "Absolutely. You're a glowing, emotionally repressed genetic superweapon with sarcasm issues." Her lip twitched. "Flatterer. And yet," he said, "you haven't killed me. Yet." That night, when the ship dimmed for its artificial night cycle, Reese passed through the lounge and saw Elira curled near the fusion core's heat vents, blanket around her like a cocoon. She wasn't asleep. Her eyes glowed faintly, but she didn't hiss or throw anything when he walked by. He took that as progress. The kestrel quivered under a pulse wave blast as the ship lurched sideways through the chaotic rings of Corello, a planet famous for 3 things: black market engines, scandalous zero-G theater, and the worst navigational hazards this side of a wormhole rave. Outside, the rings sparkled like frozen confetti, if confetti had the unfortunate habit of tearing ships to shreds. Inside, chaos had taken a coffee break. Reese staggered into the cockpit, clutching his side. "Status?" "Nominal," Bob replied in that too calm tone that suggested either confidence or suppressed glee. "If by nominal you mean our shielding is down to 30%, our navigation system is drunk, and the only thing between us and being atomized is your unique ability to wing it." "Comforting." Reese flopped into the pilot's chair and adjusted the controls with the gentle touch of someone trying not to wake a sleeping tiger. "Where's Elira?" "Threatening the fuse box," Bob said. "She's convinced it insulted her." "It did spark at her last time," Reese muttered. "I'll log it as self-defense." The ship shuddered again as another pulse wave rolled through space, this one stronger and with an unmistakable whine. Reese's knuckles tightened around the control yoke. "They're trying to disable us without blowing the hull. They want her alive. Or at least still mostly blinking," Bob added helpfully. Elira burst into the cockpit like a thunderclap in a jumpsuit, her hair still crackling from static, her eyes blazing. "Tell me those weren't syndicate tags on that scout ship." "They were," Reese said, not taking his eyes off the sensor screen. 3 ships, light armor, faster than us. She scowled. Faster doesn't matter if you outmaneuver them. Great, he said. You're volunteering? Her grin was predatory. Move. He did, more out of instinct than trust, and she slid into the pilot's seat with a fluidity that was unnerving, like the ship recognized her. Her fingers danced over the controls, rerouting power, recalibrating engines mid-drift, and muttering insults and synthery under her breath. Bob leaned in. Are we dying less now? Considerably, Reese said, watching as the Kestrel twisted through the rings in a mad spiral that somehow dodged incoming fire, while also nearly making him throw up. One of the Syndicate ships clipped a fragment of crystal debris. Corellian ring matter was notorious for its density, and spun off into oblivion, venting atmosphere. Illyra let out a small, satisfied hum. Reese blinked at her. Remind me never to argue with you while holding sharp objects. You're learning. Once they were clear, she brought the ship down behind one of the shattered moons for cover. As the Kestrel settled into orbit, Reese exhaled deeply, still braced for another hit that didn't come. You've flown before, he said. Military training? I was born knowing how to fly. She stood, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeves. Synthari brains are built for pattern recognition and predictive simulation. Flight is comfortable. B.O.B. beeped thoughtfully. So you're like a deadly space pigeon. She narrowed her eyes. I don't know what that is, but if it's an insult, I'll burn your hard drive. Noted. Pigeons are majestic. Later in the galley, Reese microwaved 2 packets of dehydrated stir-fry, which somehow managed to smell both spicy and suspicious. He offered one to Illyra, who sniffed it like a cat examining a trap. What's in this? She asked. Soy protein, minerals, hope. She took it anyway and sat cross-legged on the floor, eating silently for a few moments. Then, thanks. He blinked. Was that gratitude? Don't get used to it. I won't. I'm writing it down, though. She rolled her eyes but didn't throw anything. For Illyra, that was practically a hug. And as Reese leaned back and listened to the quiet hum of the ship around them, he realized something unexpected. He didn't want her to leave. Not just because of the bounty, not just because of what she could do, but because somehow amid the chaos and sarcasm and glowing veins, she'd started to feel like part of the crew. Even if she did threaten to melt Bob at least twice a day, the Synthari war cradle loomed ahead like a broken god's crown, silent and silver, floating in the vacuum of a dying system. The dying star it orbited, red, swollen, and exhausted, cast long shadows across the ruined hull, making the structure seem less like a ship and more like a sarcophagus built to contain something ancient, something dangerous. Reese didn't like ancient and dangerous. Not before coffee. He stared at the view screen, arms crossed. This was your idea, he muttered to Illyra, who stood beside him with all the tension of a drawn bowstring. I didn't say it was a good idea, she replied, eyes fixed on the slowly spinning structure. I said it was mine. Bob rolled into the cockpit behind them, carrying 2 data tablets, a thermal blanket, and, somehow, 3 muffins. I have several concerns, the bot intoned. Chief among them. That thing is older than your species' ability to use soap. And yet, Reese said, snatching a muffin, we're going anyway. The shuttle they took was barely larger than a storage closet with engines, and smelled faintly of burnt lubricant and regret. Illyra insisted on piloting again, and Reese didn't argue, mostly because he valued both his organs and his pride. As they approached the cradle, Illyra whispered something under her breath in Synthari. The words sounded sharp, like glass chiming in zero gravity. What was that? Reese asked. A greeting, she said. Or a warning. Hard to translate. The docking bay doors of the cradle opened as they neared, without any signal, invitation, or even dramatic creaking. It was like the place recognized her. That's not creepy, Reese muttered. It's worse, Bob said. It's polite. Inside, the cradle was a cathedral of cold metal. Towering pillars of fused crystal hummed with power. The walls pulsed faintly, alive in a way Reese couldn't explain. Illyra walked ahead, drawn forward as though following a thread only she could see. Her fingers trailed along a console, which lit up under her touch. Images flickered to life. Recordings, memories, fragments of war. Syntheri soldiers marching, burning, breaking, then retreating, then falling. "I remember this," she said, voice low. "Not from life, from programming. We were fed the past through code. We dreamed the war before we ever fought it." Reese stepped beside her, watching as a vision played of a Synthari child being lifted into a stasis pod, eyes wide, glowing faintly. "You were born in one of these." "Grown," she corrected. "Designed, programmed, tested, modified." He looked at her, so alive, so defiant, and couldn't reconcile her with the engineered obedience he saw in the recordings. "You broke the chain," he said, her jaw clenched. "Maybe, but this place still remembers what I'm supposed to be." At the heart of the cradle was a chamber shaped like a starflower, all sharp petals and curved steel. An interface rose from the center. When Alira touched it, the room came alive with light and sound. A voice spoke, deep and genderless, in flawless Syntheri. "Elira 7, authorization confirmed. Command interface active. Shall we initialize warform protocols?" Reese's spine stiffened. "Let's not do that." Alira stared at the glowing interface. For a moment, Reese saw something in her face. Temptation, power, control, purpose, and then she took a step back. "Number, shut it down." "Command refused," the voice replied. "You are the last. We obey." She raised a trembling hand, and with a scream of fury, slammed her palm into the interface. Light surged. Sparks flew. The console cracked down the middle, and the entire room shuddered like it was morning. "Now it's shut down," she said, panting. Reese caught her as she stumbled. She was shaking. "You didn't have to do that," he said gently. "Yes," she whispered. "I did." They made their way back through the now dark corridors, the cradle silent again. As the shuttle launched, the entire structure began to collapse inward, drawn into the gravity well of the dying star. Back aboard the Kestrel, Elira said nothing for a long time. Then as Reese handed her a thermal blanket and a warm drink, she mumbled, "You're not completely useless, you know." "High praise," he said. "Don't push it." But she didn't stop him when he sat beside her, didn't move away when their shoulders touched. Outside, the cradle burned like a fallen star. The Kestrel hurtled through the Seriphus Rift, a glowing scar of twisted space-time where physics took smoke breaks and gravity occasionally pirouetted just to show off. Outside, nebular filaments swirled like the ribbons of a celestial dancer on something stronger than caffeine. Inside, chaos was more mundane. A half-burnt meal, a damaged navigation array, and one very grumpy alien sulking in the maintenance corridor. Reese ducked under a sparking conduit, waving away the smell of fried circuits and overcooked noodles. "Bob," he shouted toward the bridge, "please tell me you didn't rewire the kitchen power grid through the weapon system again." "I absolutely didn't," Bob called back. "This time it was through the toilet sensors. Far more efficient." Reese groaned and rounded the corner, stopping short when he found Elira crouched beside an open wall panel, surrounded by humming tools, disassembled parts, and what he could only describe as a very creative pile of broken logic chips. "Is that my flux regulator?" he asked. She glanced up without guilt. "It was rattling. I fixed it." "By removing it entirely?" "I fixed the rattling." "You're welcome." Reese dropped to a seat across from her, careful not to knock over the tiny magnetic wrench doing slow somersaults in zero-G. "So, are we talking about what happened at the cradle? Or are we still in the phase where you avoid eye contact and threaten inanimate objects?" Elira didn't answer immediately. Her hands continued to work, tightening and slotting in pieces with that eerie Synthari precision. Eventually she said, "It offered me control, legacy, obedience, and for 1 second I wanted all of it." "You didn't take it," Reese said softly. "I wanted to." Her voice was a whisper now, and that scares me more. Reese was quiet for a beat. Then, "You ever try Earth whiskey?" "That's scary," Elira snorted, a sound so close to a laugh that Bob's sensors probably flagged it as an anomaly. "You're an idiot." "I try. keeps expectations low. Before more emotional breakthroughs could happen, which would be terrible, obviously, alarms blared through the ship. Red lights strobed overhead. Bob's voice echoed from the speaker. Incoming transmission. Encrypted. Syndicate origin. Estimated interception in 4 minutes. Also, someone touched my muffin stash. Elira stood, grabbing a plasma pistol from a nearby crate like it was a hairbrush. 4 minutes? I can disable 3 ships in that time. Let's shoot for 2, Reese replied, rising. They ran for the bridge as the Kestrel began evasive maneuvers. On the screen, 3 sleek Syndicate interceptors peeled into view, black and gold and bristling with weapons. The lead ship opened comms, projecting a polished, too-perfect human face. Captain Calder, the voice purred, you're harboring stolen genetic property. Surrender her, and we'll let you keep the rest of your limbs. Reese leaned forward. Can I choose which ones? The voice paused. No. Then it's a hard pass. The connection cut. The enemy ship surged forward. Elira slipped into the co-pilot seat, eyes narrowing. We do this my way. Wasn't planning on arguing, Reese muttered, gripping the controls. Bob chimed in, deploying countermeasures, also launching muffins. For distraction? Outside, space exploded into a ballet of motion. Plasma arcs carved across the rift's distorted horizon. Elira took control of targeting, firing with methodical calm, each shot a perfect punctuation mark on a deadly sentence. One interceptor veered too hard, caught in a gravitational knot, and vanished into nothing with a ripple. Nice shot, Reese said, sweat beading at his brow. I wasn't aiming there. Even better. After a brutal few minutes, the remaining ships peeled away, retreating into the rift's folds. The Kestrel drifted, battered but intact. In the silence that followed, Elira leaned back in her chair. They won't stop. No, Reese said, but neither will we. She turned her head slightly. So we're a we now? Contractually obligated, he said, offering a grin. I even signed it in sarcasm ink. Elira rolled her eyes, but this time she didn't correct him. The stars around Dralos 5 blinked unnaturally, like they were trying to warn the living to turn around and go home. Reese had ignored worse omens, but even he had to admit, this felt different. The black void that surrounded the planetoid wasn't just cold, it felt intentional. The archive was buried beneath the surface, shielded by quantum cloaks and riddles in dead languages. It pulsed on sensors like a heartbeat, slow, ancient, and just off-tempo enough to make your stomach twist. According to Bob's scans, it was Syntherian origin. According to Elira, it was too clean to be innocent. According to Reese, it was the kind of place where you brought backup and a very large flashlight. The Kestrel landed without ceremony, its hull creaking like it was offended by the train. Reese and Elira disembarked into a landscape that looked like someone had forgotten to finish rendering it. Flat gray stone, sharp ridges, a sky like stained glass frozen mid-shatter. This place is wrong, Elira said, scanning with one of Bob's modified scopes. It's not just Synthori, it's pre-Forge. Older than the war. Older than me. Do I need to bring a birthday gift or a shovel? Reese muttered. They descended into a crystalline cavern, light refracting in geometric echoes. At its heart stood a towering spire, smooth and humming with pale energy. When Elira approached, it flared to life. A voice emerged, low and layered, like a choir whispering in binary. Elira 7, final seed, sequence unlocked. Receive instruction, restore the line. Reese's hand drifted toward his sidearm. Elira didn't flinch. I'm not restoring anything, she said aloud. The spire shifted, light formed shapes, echoes of her, hundreds of Syntheri standing at attention. Not real, not alive, but possible. Reese stepped closer, cautious. It's offering you a way to bring them back. Not them, she whispered. Versions of them. Controlled, improved, conditioned. The archive AI pulsed again. Warform Elira 7. Evolution demands obedience. Without the line, extinction is assured. Funny, Reese said. Every time someone offers survival, it comes with a leash. The spire responded, faster now, almost pleading. You are design, you are directive. Purpose is not a prison. Elira stepped back, eyes glowing brighter. You built me to kill. I won't build more of me. You already are. A flicker on the spire, her biometric readout, vital signs, hormonal levels, neural patterns. Deviation recorded, adaptive behavior accelerating, emotional growth, bonding. Oh no, Reese said. Did it just accuse you of having feelings? Elira's ears twitched. Shut up, human. Bob's voice crackled through the comm. I'm just chiming in to say this entire conversation is making my circuits itch. The AI's tone shifted, no longer neutral. Cold now. If you will not lead, you will be contained. The spire opened. Defense systems unfolded like steel flowers. Drones, lasers, particle loops spinning up in eerie silence. Reese grabbed Elira's arm. I'm gonna assume negotiations off the table. Very off. What followed was a dance of plasma and instinct. Elira moved like lightning bottled in skin, deflecting beams with jury-rigged shields while Reese laid down cover fire and shouted entirely unhelpful things like, Left! And why is that one glowing? The archive began to collapse mid-fight, ancient code unraveling, as if Elira's refusal had destabilized it from within. Go, go, go! Reese yelled, grabbing Elira's hand. They barely cleared the caverns before the ground split open and the spire folded inward on itself like a dying flower. Back on the kestrel, gasping, burned, and covered in dust, they sat in silence. Finally, Reese said, You okay? Elira stared at the floor. They wanted me to become something I never asked to be. You didn't, he nudged her knee with his. You chose. That's the difference. She didn't speak for a long time. Then softly, I'm tired. Rest then. No one's programming you here. She leaned back against the console, not quite touching him, but close. And Reese, for once, didn't try to fill the silence. The kestrel drifted in high orbit above Venera Station, its hull scorched but whole, its crew quiet for once. Below them, the shimmering rings of the gas giant glowed like soft, breathing light, one of the galaxy's prettier neighborhoods, if you ignored the black market arms dealers operating out of its fourth moon. Elira stood at the viewport, her arms crossed loosely, not in defiance this time, but in thought. Her reflection hovered on the glass, those signature long ears tapering like twin comets against the dark. She didn't glow quite as much anymore. Not because her bioluminescence had dimmed, but because something inside her had steadied. Behind her, Reese approached, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and a suspiciously dented muffin. So, he said, easing into the co-pilot's chair with a wince, Bob's got the bounty data patched. Tribunals officially delisted you from the syndicate's highly wanted and mildly inconvenient list. That was fast, Elira murmured. Well, blackmail's faster than diplomacy, he said. Turns out those recordings we pulled from the archive made certain senators very eager to forget your name. One even offered us concert tickets. I hope you said no. I said yes. They're holographic beetles. You don't say no to that. She allowed herself a small smile. So that's it. I'm free? As free as any of us are, which is to say, not very, but no one's shooting at you this week. Silence fell again, not uncomfortable. Just still. Reese glanced at her. You could go anywhere, you know. No chains, no pursuers. The Kestrel isn't exactly a 5-star cruiser. I've been in a cage, she said, not looking at him. I know the shape of it. This isn't one. I'm flattered, he said. Most people compare us to a flying trash can. Bob's voice echoed from the hallway. I am the trash can. Let's be accurate. Elira turned fully now, walking toward Reese with slow, certain steps. You once asked me if I was born or built. The answer's both. But what I've done since then, what I've become, that's mine. Reese set down his cup. I'd say you've earned a break. And yet, she said, leaning against the console beside him, I'm still here. The ship's console chirped, a message from the fringe sectors. Trouble, a planetary settlement asking for help. Syndicate tech showing up in strange hands. Reese raised an eyebrow. Feel like another detour? Elira's lip twitched. Only if I get to fly. Only if you let me live this time. She moved past him to the cockpit, already flicking switches and aligning trajectories. The glow beneath her skin shimmered brighter for a moment, then faded into a steady pulse. Controlled. Grounded. Heron as the kestrel. Lifted away from the station, her engines humming with the deep purr of readiness, Reese sank into his chair beside her. You ever wonder, he said, how all this started with you threatening to bite me? I still might, she said. Depends on how long this mission takes. I'll bring snacks. The ship jumped to FTL, the stars stretching into bright ribbons across the void. And somewhere between the flicker of light and the hum of drive coils, between what she was and what she chose to be, Illyra let herself curl sideways into the seat, her shoulder brushing Reese's. I'm still not your pet, she murmured, eyes already closing. I know, he said softly, adjusting the blanket she didn't ask for. But maybe you're something better. No more chains, no more orders. Just a girl, a ship, a sarcastic captain, and the stars. And for now that was enough.